Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. This spooky image for Halloween effectively demonstrates mixing ambient light from candles with studio flash. The inclusion of the picture is enhanced by using a wide-angle lens with prominent leading lines. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so this is the subject, or the main part of the subject anyway, this skull. So what I'm going to do to start with is to build a set around this object. Okay, so we'll just put that to one side for 1 second, and I'll start with the surface that I want to use here. So what I'm going to do is put some old tiles down, and I'll put another one just at the side here. There we are, that's the sort of thing. I'll probably add a few more bits and pieces as the shoot goes on. So the next thing would be my main lead-in line, and I'm going to create that with a piece of old wood, which I'm just going to place along here. There we are. And now I can put my skull back. I want it leaning over slightly because it adds a bit more depth to the image, I think. Okay, so with all those bits in place, what I can do now is just put a background up here. For that I'm going to use an old piece of sheet steel. So with that in the background, next thing to do would be to set up the camera position. So what I'm going to do is place this tripod here at the front, about here somewhere. Now initially I'm going to be using a standard lens. So on my camera, which is this medium format camera, that's an 80mm lens. So on full frame terms, that would give you a similar field of view with a 50mm lens. Now this camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to see what's going on as I capture the images. Okay, so we just place this on the top of the tripod here. I'll just turn it on. And there we are, you can see that the software has recognized the camera and it's showing me all the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. So it's in full manual mode. I have got a shutter speed of a 60th of a second, ISO 800, and at the moment the aperture is set to 4.5. Okay, so just with those settings, what I'm going to do is just grab a test image. So let's just grab that and see what happens. It will autofocus the lens and we'll see what we get. There we are. So for a test image, it's not bad. You can see that I've got a nice leading line going on here, but the rest of the set needs a little dressing. So we'll go back to that and see what I can do. So what I'm going to put on here, first of all, I'm going to put a few bits of tile just in this area down here, just to fill in the gaps really, something like that. There we are. And once I've got all those in, the next thing would be just to add a little bit of chain, just to give some depth to the image. So I've got some old chain here. There. And finally, I'm going to add a few candles. Now the candles will become important because that's going to be part of the lighting for this. I'm just going to place this one at the back here. Then I've got another one, which I'm just going to place about there somewhere. And finally one at the front. There we are. We'll light those later on. Okay, so with all that now set, let's grab that image again and see what it looks like now. There we are. So that's added a bit more interest. So we've got this going on in the background here. I'm not too sure of the actual position of that yet. Possibly needs adjusting a little, but you get the idea. Okay, but the thing to notice about this, even at this stage, without any proper lighting as such, that it's not very inclusive. And that's because although I have this leading line going in along here, the actual camera itself isn't very close to the subject. And that's because I'm just using that standard lens. So I've swapped the lens from an 80mm lens, 50mm in full format terms, for a 28mm lens, which would be closer to 16mm in a full format term. So in order to get a similar field of view, I can now move the camera a lot further in. There we are. And you should be able to see that I'm now very close to the subject. But hopefully, if I've set everything up right, I should end up with a very similar field of view. So let's just grab an image and see what happens. There we are. And you should be able to see, if I just flip between those, that the actual size of the skull is about the same in each image. But there is a huge difference in the way it looks, and that is down to the wide-angle lens allowing me to place the camera much closer in. I think the overall composition isn't bad. It probably needs adjusting a little bit. This candle, for instance, I think could come a bit further forwards, and maybe the one at the back needs adjusting. So I'll attend to those things and we'll have another go. There we are. So I've adjusted those bits. Let's grab it again and see what it looks like now. Yes, that's looking a bit better, I think. Okay. So finally, I think I just want to adjust the focus on this skull. So what I'm going to do is just use live view for that. So if I just go to live view here, like so. And now zoom into the center of the image. And now I can just use these controls just to focus up the image a bit better. That's brought that into focus quite nicely, I think. Okay. One last test image. We'll see what we get. So now if I zoom all the way in on this one, yeah, that's given me quite a nice image, I think. Okay. So with that done, next thing to do would be to light the candles, and we'll just see what difference that makes. So there we go. They're all lit now. I'll grab an image and see what we get. Okay, the first impression that I've got is that I haven't actually made a great deal of difference to the overall exposure. This is what we had before, and this is what I've got now. And that's down to having the house lights on and not having set the parameters for that particular image. So what I'm going to do is first of all turn the house lights out, and just with the house lights out, before I alter anything, I'll just grab another image. Now I have a light on still so you can see what's going on in the studio, so I will get a small amount of contamination, but not a great deal. Okay, so this is the sort of thing that I'm getting. So what I think I'd like to do is adjust the shutter speed so I end up with a longer exposure, which gives a bit more time for the candles to sway and move and so on. So what I'm going to do is change the 60th to a 30th. Now to compensate for that, I'm going to change the ISO from 800 to 400. So in effect, the overall exposure will be exactly the same. However, the shutter speed will be one stop longer. There we are. Now at the moment you probably won't see a great deal of difference between those. So that's what we had before, and that's what I've got now. But once there's some movement in there, and there will be some movement from the smoke that I'm going to add and the air currents that that will create, these will then become a bit more active. Well, that's the idea anyway. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do is just add a small amount of flash, just to fill in at the back here and to make the smoke a little more visible. So for that, I'm just going to use this small flash head. And I'm just going to place this at the back. There we are. See what that looks like. I've set that to its lowest energy level. You don't need a great deal of flash for this, so I'll leave all these parameters as they are, and we'll just grab an image and see what the difference is. So at first sight that looks like there's too much flash there. That's what we had before, and that's what I've got now. But I think that's only half of the story. I think it just needs to be more concentrated. So in order to do that, I'm just going to add a snoot. There we are. So with that in place, I'll grab that again. Yes, that seems to have calmed things down a little. So this is what we had before, and this is what I've got now. I think I just need to adjust it slightly so I'm not lighting this up quite as much as I am at the moment. So I'm just going to adjust that and take it backwards ever so slightly. There we go. Let's grab that again. So I've lost that highlight at the back. So this is what we had before, and that's what I've got now. Okay, so with that, it's probably time to add some smoke. So I'm just using one of these vape-based smoke machines, and I'm just going to start that up and just drop some smoke down the back here. There we go. And I'll just put a little around the front as well. I'll just grab that. Go. Maybe add a bit more. Just at the front here. There we are. I think out of all that lot, we've probably got something which will be quite nice. So what I'm going to do now is review all those, and I'll take one or two of them into Photoshop just to do some post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up 3 of the images that I captured earlier. I've got this one, which is my blank slate, if you like. This is without any smoke at all. And then I've just picked 2 of the ones which have some smoke in them. And I've got this one here. I quite like this swirly bit down the side here. And I've got this one here, because I quite like the front part. Okay, so the first job would be just to make one file out of all 3 images. And the way I'm going to do that is to produce a stack, which will put each one of these files on a separate layer. So go to File, come down to Scripts, select Load Files into Stack, ask it to add the open files, and the images should be aligned anyway, so I'm not going to bother with that, and I'm just going to click on OK. Right, so now Photoshop has made me this new file at the top here, so I can close down the camera originals. I no longer need those. This is what I'll be editing. And you can see here I've got each of the images on a separate layer. So now I can use the different layers to manipulate how the final image looks. So the first thing I'm going to do is on this top layer here, I'm just going to add a layer mask to that, and I'm just going to invert that layer mask, which will hide it all together, like that. So for instance, if I wanted to bring through the area where the skull is, then all I would need to do is paint in white on this mask, and that would bring that part of the image through. Let me show you. So if I just select white as the foreground colour, grab a paintbrush, and now just over the skull I can bring the other image through, like that. So that's with the effect, and that's without. It just clears the smoke out of the way. Okay, so the other one that I'd like to just bring a little into, because at the moment I'm just showing this image here, would be part of this one. And the part of this one that I like is this bit of smoke up here. So again, what I can do is leave that image on like it is, but select that, add a layer mask to it, and this time I'll leave it as it is and just paint on this one in black, wherever I paint in black will bring through the underneath image. So let's just do that. So it was this bit up here that we liked, wasn't it? So we'll just add that. There. Okay, and I've just noticed I've got a double image of the candle here, and that's caused by this top layer here. So if I just temporarily turn that off, that's the image of the candle I want, and that's what I've got because I've actually brought through slightly too much of this clean skull. So if I go back to that particular mask, the advantage of using a mask is that you can always go backwards. So if I now paint in black on this mask, so I've got black selected, I've got a paintbrush, but it's a bit too big. So what I'm going to do is just make that a bit smaller. I'll just bring that down there like that. There we are. Yes, so that's worked quite well. I might just bring in a little more of the smoke at the top here, just like that. Good. So finally, I'm just going to add a crop. I'm going to use this for video, so I'm going to use a specific ratio of 16:9. And I think I just want to bring the edges in slightly, something like that. I want to maintain this leading line. I think that looks quite nice. Good. So there we have it. So by using a wide-angle lens, I've been able to get a lot closer to the subject. This tends to make the image a lot more inclusive. And then by carefully matching the output of the flash to the candles, we've been able to balance the light across the scene. And I think overall, that's worked rather well. Okay, well, I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.